Hello there, and welcome to your next math lesson. If you haven't already, grab a piece of lined paper and a pencil so that you can take notes as we go through this lesson. Today's lesson is called Compare Decimals. Little review before we get started. Remember that a decimal number is just any number with a decimal point in it. And let's review our decimal place values too, our decimal point place values as well. Let's say we had a number like 3 and 271 thousandths. Here to the left of the decimal point, we have the ones place. The ones place is always to the left of the decimal point. And then directly to the right of the decimal point, we have the tenths place. The place value position to the right of that is the hundredths place. And the place value position to the right of that is the thousandths place. And that's as far as we're going, to the thousandths place, the third place value position over from the right of the decimal point. So the way we'd say this decimal number is 3 and, remember we say and for the decimal point, 3 and 271 thousandths. That's how we'd say this number. Today's lesson is on comparing decimals. And one really important thing that you need to know when you're comparing decimals, and it'll become apparent why this is so important later, is that you can add zeros to the right of a decimal number and it does not change the value. Let's go ahead and take that down as a note. Zeros added to the right of a decimal number do not, put that in all caps and underline it, change the value. Okay, they do not change the value. So what does that mean? It means this decimal number, 7/10, equals the exact same thing as this decimal number, 70/100. And it also equals the exact same thing as this decimal number, 700,000. These are all different versions of the same value. It's just kind of like you have a pizza you have the same amount, but it's cut up into way more pieces. If you had a pizza that was cut up into 10 slices and you had 7 of those slices, you would have 7/10 of the pizza. If you had a pizza that was the same size, but it was cut up into 100 slices and you had 70 of those 100, you don't have more pizza just because you have 70 slices here as opposed to 7 slices here. You just have 70 slices that are way smaller because the pizza is cut up into 100 pieces. And the same thing, if you had 700 slices of a pizza cut up into 1,000 pieces, you don't have more pizza than if you just have 7 slices of the same size pizza cut up into 10 slices. The slices are just way smaller, so it takes 700 of them to equal 7 of a pizza cut into 10 slices. So when you add zeros, you're just chopping the pizza up into more slices, but you're not adding any value to the number. And if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it yet. Just know that adding zeros to the right of a decimal does not change the value. Let's get to comparing decimals, shall we? Let's say we had 2 beetles. One of the beetles is 3 8/10 of an inch tall. That's a pretty big beetle. The other one is 3 6/10 of an inch tall. Which beetle is taller? We're going to put greater than, less than, or equal to between these two numbers to show which one's taller. Now, how do you tell which decimal number is taller? You always do the same thing, you stack them. And the first thing you stack is the decimal points, because when we're stacking decimal numbers to find out which one's bigger, here's the most important part. We have to line up all the place value positions. And so we line up the decimal points first, because if we line up the decimal points first, we know that we'll get all the place value positions in the right spot. And then if we build the numbers around the decimal points, we'll put 8 here, that's in the tenths place, 3 here, that's in the ones place, and we'll put 3 here, that's the ones place, and 6 here, that's the tenths place. Now we have the place value positions lined up correctly. Now all we have to do is compare each digit in each number to its corresponding digit in the same place value position in the other number. So we compare the ones place first, and they're both a 3. If they're both the same digit, you move on to the right to the next place value position. This one has an 8, whereas this one has a 6. Therefore, this number's bigger. You start at the left, moving your way over to the right until you find a number that has a larger digit than the other number has in that same place value position. So 3 and 8/10 is bigger than 3 and 6/10. Okay? So that's how you tell which decimal number is bigger. Let's do another example. I'm going to erase. You won't have to erase because you have more room on your paper than me. You can just go under it. Let's compare 8/10 to 80/100. Okay? How do we compare these two decimal numbers? Is it going to be greater than, less than, or equal to? Well, what we do is we stack them on top of each other, lining up all the place value positions. And the best way to do that is to line up the decimal points on top of each other first. So that way you know all the place value positions end up in the right spot. They both have zeros in the ones place. They both have an 8 in the tenths place. And one of them has a 0 in the hundredths place. Now we can compare. We compare the ones place first, both zeros. Then we compare the tenths place, both 8s. Then we compare the hundredths place. This one has nothing, and this one has a 0. What's bigger, 0 or nothing? Oh wait, they both equal nothing. 0 means nothing. Also, can we add a 0 to the right of this without changing the value? Yes, we can. Adding a 0 to the right of a decimal number does not change the value. You can always add zeros to the right, and it doesn't change the value. So what does this mean? It means these two decimal numbers are equal. They mean the same thing. 8/10 means the same thing as 80/100. Because if you had 8/10 of a pizza, if you had a pizza cut up into 10 slices, and you had 8 of those slices, you'd have the exact same amount of pizza as if you had 80 slices of a pizza that was the same size, but it was cut up into 100 slices. It's just these 80 slices are way smaller, 10 times smaller than these 8 slices. Okay? That is your lesson for the day. Make sure you also click on the guided practice lesson and also open up the guided and independent practice worksheet so that you can follow along with me as I do the guided practice with you. Catch you next time.